Good evening. My name is Kim Graybiel, and welcome to this Monday evening Master Gardener Program's presentation on 3 selective invasive weeds. Before getting started, just a few housekeeping items. First, the microphones have been muted and the participant videos are off so that we can focus on the presenters. The chat box is visible to moderators for questions, and questions will be periodically relayed to the presenter. If you don't see the chat box, look for the More tab or the 3 dots tab on your Zoom panel. We will be recording tonight's presentation and posting it on our Master Gardener website. At the conclusion of this evening's workshop, 7 short evaluation questions will be posted on the screen. Your responses provide important feedback to us, and the evaluation is a requirement of our funding partner. Thank you in advance for taking a minute to respond. Note that the survey questions will be in pairs, asking you to rate your knowledge of certain topics before and after today's talk. So please read the questions carefully. They are not duplicates, but are rather asking you about your knowledge level, both before and then after the talk. So thank you again for your interest in the early detection of invasive species. We hope you enjoy learning some really fascinating information about our natural world and that you will be able to participate further as citizen scientists. It is through the practice of citizen science that people can share their observations and contribute to monitoring and data collection programs. And this practice of public participation and collaboration increases scientific knowledge. Next slide, please. This evening's workshop is brought to you by the Master Gardener Program of WSU Extension Clark County and Green Neighbors, sponsored by Clark County Public Health Solid Waste Outreach. Master Gardeners are trained to receive and recommend university and research-based information, and Clark Green Neighbors is an information clearinghouse for sustainable living, advice, and volunteer opportunities in Clark County. Our expert presenters come to us from Clark County Public Works Department Vegetation Management for Monday's presentation on weeds, and the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, for Tuesday's presentation on insects. You'll learn more about these 2 organizations and our expert presenters later on in this program. Next slide, please. Your hosts for this evening's workshop are Erica Johnson, WSU Extension Master Gardener Program Coordinator, and Master Gardeners Carol Wiseman and myself, Kim Graybiel. I'm now turning the presentation over to Carol.
Hello, my name's Carol Wiseman. I'm one of the Master Gardeners supporting this program. This intro will be followed by a training session tonight provided by Justin Collell from the Clark County Weed Board. Justin will be speaking to us about invasive weeds, and tomorrow night, Yolanda Nguanzo from the USDA will be presenting a session on invasive insects. Today's agenda: we're looking for participants to help spread awareness and help with early detection of invasive weeds and insects. The training you'll receive will help you identify these invasives and distinguish them from common lookalikes. Spotting an invasive can happen when you're walking the dog, taking a hike, or even just on a trip to the grocery store. Report your findings and make a difference in controlling invasives in Washington State. The training sessions tonight and tomorrow night will provide tools and resources to make your efforts successful. Tonight's agenda will take us through a brief introduction into invasives, what they are, and what weeds and insects are we targeting. Justin's training session will follow this brief introduction. After Justin's presentation, we will demonstrate the reporting tool and provide links for additional resources. What are invasive species? Invasive species are any species that are intentionally or unintentionally introduced into our area that cause harm to the environment, the economy, or people. A few examples are starlings, house sparrows, zebra mussels, the northern pikefish, gypsy moths, or the dreaded Asian giant hornet. I know you've all seen some of these and hopefully not the dreaded Asian giant hornet. Erica will provide a brief introduction to the 3 weeds and the 3 insects that we are targeting. These 6 species were chosen in consultation with our experts as species that a citizen scientist could readily identify and provide valuable information to support, control, and/or eradication efforts. Go ahead, Erica.
Thanks, Carol. Invasive species have a tremendous negative impact on our environment. Their lack of natural enemies and their ability to spread rapidly allows them to outcompete native wildlife in natural areas and make it uninhabitable for them. They're a major cause of crop loss, and they invade our home gardens. This results in both lost revenue and expense in terms of time and money spent battling them. The cost is estimated at over $137 billion in the United States annually. Oftentimes, battling means using harsh pesticides, and these pesticides often end up entering our rivers and streams. So early detection and eradication pays big, big dividends. Next slide, please. So throughout this talk, we'll reference both the common and Latin names for the 6 weed and insect species that are its focus. While common names are much easier to spell and pronounce, their use can result in confusion if not accompanied by the scientific or Latin name. If the audience is clear on which species the common name is in reference to, its use is acceptable. The 3 insects that we're targeting with this program are the emerald ash borer beetle, the Asian longhorn beetle, and spotted lanternfly. And the 3 weed species which you'll be learning about tonight include poison hemlock, tansy ragwort, and garlic mustard. Now, Kim challenged me to correctly pronounce the scientific names when we discussed who was going to cover this topic, and I accepted the challenge, so here goes. The emerald ash borer beetle is Agralis planipennis. The Asian longhorn beetle is Anoplophora glabripennis. The spotted lanternfly is Lycorma delicatula. Poison hemlock is Conium maculatum. Tansy ragwort is Jacobia vulgaris. And garlic mustard is Alliaria petiolata. So now that we're clear on which species we're talking about, you can locate and use the scientific name when it's needed, such as for an internet search or when reporting a positive find, but otherwise refer to the common name. And lastly, another note about terms. In his presentation tonight on weeds, Justin will be using the term noxious. This term refers to invasive weeds that are particularly problematic and or which are in the stage of spread where, if managed, impacts may be dramatically mitigated. Management of weeds that are designated as noxious is legally required. So next slide, and we'll take a look at the weeds that we're targeting. So tonight you'll be trained to recognize poison hemlock, tansy ragwort, and garlic mustard. And all of these are currently found in Clark County. Poison hemlock is a Class B noxious weed, and Class B indicates weeds whose distribution is limited to portions of Washington state, but may be widespread in other parts, and eradication is required by law. Poison hemlock came from Europe in the late 1800s and is now in every state in the country. It was introduced into North America as an ornamental, marketed as a winter fern, but it escaped cultivation and it has become naturalized. It's acutely toxic to people and animals, and this is the reason why we want to keep it from getting well established here. It has a couple of lookalikes, so learning to discern it from those are key. Tansy ragwort is also a Class B noxious weed, and it came to the United States on 2 fronts. It was first observed in Eastern Canada in the 1850s, and later in the Western US in the 1920s. So it's now found in 2 large clusters in the Eastern US and Western US, with not so much of it in the middle of the country. It's a native of Europe and Western Asia, and it's thought to have arrived in soil used as ship's ballast. Tansy ragwort will be the easiest of the 3 to find, but it's dangerous to animals that feed on it, so we want to minimize its spread in as much as possible. And lastly, garlic mustard is a Class A noxious weed, and Class A indicates a species whose distribution is still limited in Washington state. Garlic mustard comes from Europe and parts of Asia as well, and the earliest known report of it in the United States dates back to 1868 on Long Island, New York. It is now found in 36 states and 5 Canadian provinces, and it's believed to have been introduced for medicinal and culinary purposes. Garlic mustard is a big threat to forest ecosystems. The plant is self-fertile and spreads vegetatively as well, and a single plant is capable of producing 8,000 seeds in a single season. And they germinate very early in February and March before those of our native herbaceous plants. The plant is very cold hardy and it thrives in shade. So because of these characteristics, it's able to form monospecific stands that dominate the understory of even relatively undisturbed forests, and it actively displaces native understory plant species. Once it's established, it's almost impossible to eliminate. And as a permanent component of a site's flora, it increases its presence every year and grows out of control until it completely dominates the site. Tree seedlings and many wildflowers cannot survive the explosive growth and the spread of garlic mustard. And in addition, invertebrates and other consumers that rely on native plants are harmed by the spread of this invasive weed. And then lastly, garlic mustard produces root exudates that inhibit the growth of soil fungi, as well as leaf chemicals that kill native butterfly larvae that feed on the plant. It's still hard to find in our area, but we want to keep it that way. And that's why we're hoping you'll help us out tonight. So next slide, we'll take a quick look at the insects that we'll be targeting, and we'll learn more about those tomorrow. We're going to ask you to be on the lookout for 3 invasive insects that have not yet been found in our area. However, they are coming across the United States and coming into different communities. And when they do come, they will have a devastating effect on our community. The first is the emerald ash borer beetle, which was discovered in Michigan in just 2002, but now it is found in 35 states and as far west as Colorado. It probably arrived on solid wood packing material carried in cargo ships or airplanes from Asia. And the cost of damage in the US communities between 2009 and 2019 for treatment, removal, and replacement of new trees was calculated at $10.7 billion. Next is the Asian longhorn beetle, which was discovered in 1998 in Chicago, Illinois, and now it's found in 6 eastern United States. It's believed to have been introduced into the US on wood pallets and wood packing material from Asia. And as of 2008, total state and federal costs for the eradication program at ALB, including research and development, was about $373 million. And lastly, spotted lanternfly was first identified in Berks County, Pennsylvania in just 2014. It is believed to have arrived on shipments of stone from China, but it's now found in New York, New Jersey, Virginia, Connecticut, Delaware, and Ohio, and is on the move. Last October, 2 dead specimens were discovered in Oregon, one in a shipment of planters and one in a shipment of boxes, but no living specimens have been found to date. And a recent report from the quarantine zone in Pennsylvania indicated damage and control at $50 million per year with a loss of 484 jobs. So that's what you can look forward to tomorrow evening. Right now, I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to Justin. So we'll ask Carol to stop sharing her screen and ask Justin to start. Justin Kalel is the Weed Board Coordinator with Clark County Public Works. And the Weed Board is a 5-person board that advises the Clark County Council on controlling noxious weeds.
Great, thank you. Can everybody see my screen?
We can, thank you.
All right, great. Yes, my name is Justin Kalel. I'm the coordinator for the Clark County Noxious Weed Control Board. And the Noxious Weed Control Board is a volunteer board. Members are generally producers of agriculture in Clark County. And so they have sort of a vested interest in making sure that noxious weeds are kept in check and the impacts to agriculture are limited. So I'd like to help you learn to identify 3 species of noxious weeds that you're likely to find in Clark County. Unfortunately, likely to find them. And first, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. Washington state law, RCW 1710, is the legal requirement for landowners to control or eradicate noxious weeds in Washington state. And so you have 3 classifications, class A, B, and C. And in those categories, you have weeds that are designated for control or not designated for control. For class A weeds, the requirement is eradication, which actually means not only do you stop the plant from reproducing, but you control, you completely eradicate the roots as well, so that you might have seeds present that you can't do anything about, but even the roots of plants need to be totally eradicated. The requirement for class B and class C weeds that are designated for control. If it's designated for control, that just means that you stop it from reproducing. So the emphasis on class C noxious weeds is really more about education, and if they impact agriculture or the ecosystem, then we would potentially do more than just educate the public. But really, at this point, class C noxious weeds are so widespread that that's really not practical on a state level to try to eradicate them all or control them all. An example of class C is your common blackberry species, such as Himalayan blackberry or evergreen blackberry that everybody loves for the berries, but boy, they're everywhere, and they're so widespread that you couldn't possibly actually get rid of them all. So class B noxious weeds are a little bit more limited, but still quite widespread. And as an example, the blue circles on this map represent all of the Tansy ragwort reports that my office completed in a single year. It's very widespread, especially in the rural areas of Clark County. And the orange squares represent all of the poison hemlock reports that my office completed in a single year. So both of those weeds are very widespread, both class B. And also wanted to just touch on the term noxious. It's actually a legal term. It's the traditional legal term, and it basically just separates those that are listed from all the weeds that are not listed. Anybody can call something a weed if it's not something you like, but once you call it a noxious weed, then that's a weed that appears on the state list. Now, outside of the state list of noxious weeds, there's also a monitor list where the state weed board might be concerned about a species spreading, but haven't actually designated it for control or anything like that. So they're just keeping it in mind, monitoring it, want to spread the word, maybe discourage people from planting it, as is often the case. And I'd also like to just define for you the acronym EDRR, which is Early Detection Rapid Response. We'll touch on this again later, but it's the scheme for limiting the impacts of noxious weeds or really any invasive species. If you detect them early, you can focus your efforts on eradicating them with a rapid response. So the first noxious weed that I'll help you to identify is actually going to be the most difficult. I figured we'd just get that out of the way first. It's all downhill from here. So yeah, this is the hardest one. This is garlic mustard, the class A noxious weed that we have still in well, too much area in Clark County. We have 2 large groupings focused along Salmon Creek and properties that are right off of Salmon Creek, and also the Camas area at the mouth of the Washougal and right in downtown Camas. Widespread infestation of garlic mustard across several properties. And then you do have several little satellite areas where somehow or another those satellite spots have spread from the main areas. And so we do find garlic mustard across Clark County in different areas. So we'd like to eradicate it. It seems vanishingly possible at this point to eradicate garlic mustard, but that is still the state mandate. And here's an example of what garlic mustard will do to the forest understory. It replaces every single plant with nothing but garlic mustard. You might see the occasional sword fern or something else that can withstand this competition, but not many things can at this late stage in this invasion. On the right, you'll see the seedling and the early stages of its growth. The first year, garlic mustard produces this low growing clump that we call a rosette. It has just a few leaves coming from a central stem and doesn't have any vertical aspect to it at all the first year. But garlic mustard takes 2 years to flower. So the second year, it produces a flowering stalk. And the leaves can vary in size quite a bit. On the left, that's probably as big as you might expect them to be. And on the right, kind of the habit of filling in with a bunch of first year growth, making a carpet that shades out everything else. You should focus on the leaf margins, the veins, the overall shape of the leaf, and the lack of hairs on the surface of the top of the leaf and the bottom too, but you'll be seeing the top mostly unless you're turning it over. Also, a dead giveaway for garlic mustard is if you crush the leaves, it smells like garlic. Doesn't actually taste like garlic, so that's a little odd, but it does smell like garlic or pretty close to garlic if you crush the leaves. So that'll help you in identifying it and distinguishing it from some of the lookalikes. And there are several lookalikes. The second year's growth, you see a small clump of flowers at the end of each stem. There's a little bit of branching, but mostly there's one central stem. The seed pods that are produced after the flowers have matured and petals have fallen off. Those seed pods are called siliques. They're somewhat like pea pods, and if you examine them closely, they have raised areas where the seeds actually are, so they do look like little pea pods. Sometimes they will be a lot shorter than what's pictured here. So there is that variety of garlic mustard, but a lot of times what we have around here, it's these long seed pods. The seed pods are formed now. So if you go out, you won't find a lot of these white flowers, you'll find the seed pods. They take a while to harden off, dry out, and have their seed mature, but they will drop their seeds at the middle and end of summer. Another picture of the flowering stalk and seed pods. And again, the size can vary. You see in the top right, that's a mature plant. That's kind of the scourge of my office because it can hide behind a tree, produce its flowers and seeds, and you don't find it. And a close-up of those seed pods, you can see how the siliques have ridges and bumps where you can actually see the seeds are forming inside. Now for the lookalikes, the native plant fringe cup on the left. You'll notice it has a lot more hairs. The leaf margins, the edges of the leaves are different. The veins are different on this plant. You can tell they're not quite as pronounced. The leaf is hairy. The stem is hairy. The stem looks a lot different. The flowers look a lot different. You can just tell from looking at it. It doesn't have those siliques. And overall, the plant is about the same size, so that doesn't really help you, but won't smell like garlic if you crush it. We also have another plant called common nipplewort. That plant has a passing resemblance, but you can see those smaller sections that we call leaflets that are closer to the stem on the stalk of the leaf. Those are a giveaway that you're not looking at one whole leaf that's in a heart shape like you would with garlic mustard. You can compare it to the garlic mustard plant that's on the right, and notice how those leaves are quite glossy, different overall. There's quite a few things that you can tell them apart if you're practiced. Does anybody have any questions for me at this point about garlic mustard?
Justin, there is one question, and it is that you have what looks like a GIS map of the locations of these noxious weeds. Is that available on your website or somewhere where folks can see those?
Oh, no, that's actually something I put together custom. We used to, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we used to produce a map of all the infestations that was publicly available. We discontinued doing that as it's somewhat sensitive data. It'd be something that, if you're reporting to us that your neighbor has noxious weeds you're concerned about, and then your neighbor doesn't really want that to be public information in such a displayed way. You can certainly have generalized distribution maps. The state Noxious Weed Control Board has some generalized infestation maps. There are also programs such as EdMaps that again have kind of a heat map. If you're familiar with that, it's sort of more of a gradient, fuzzy data that kind of obscures, which person has the noxious weed, so as not to single them out. But we do have that data, but we don't publish it quite the same way.
Okay, so looking that up on EdMaps is the way to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay,
you could look it up on EdMaps. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll be sharing that at the end. There are some questions that have come in about garlic mustard. One is, if you crush it, will it irritate your skin?
No, not that I've ever seen. We don't have any indication that it's toxic at all. As was mentioned earlier, it was actually propagated when it was first brought over as a salad green. So people were eating it, and I've never heard of anybody having any adverse reaction to it on their skin.
Okay, and then there was a question, did you indicate that one of the leaves was glossy? They weren't sure if it was nipplewort or the garlic mustard?
Yeah, you can see that nipplewort is a little bit glossy, but that garlic mustard is quite a bit more glossy and shiny, hairless, and fringe cup on the left is the one that has hairs. If you examine the leaves closely, you'll see that it's not glossy, it's fuzzy.
Okay, and another question says, garlic mustard is a Class A noxious weed. Your slide said that the landowner must eradicate. How does the landowner accomplish this? What help is available from Public Works?
Yeah, okay. So let's unpack that. The way that you eradicate a plant is generally either by pulling or by spraying an herbicide to control the plant completely. The herbicide needs to be a systemic herbicide. That word systemic means that if you spray the leaves, the herbicide will move through the plant all the way down to the roots. So because eradication requires that you kill the roots, then, like I say, your options are to pull or to spray. If you treat the plant with herbicide, then that'll kill the roots. So a lot of people opt for pulling because they have a smaller infestation. Lots of folks in Camas do so. But that can be kind of problematic because sometimes the soil is harder and the plant's stems just break off. It's easier than most plants to get the root to come out, but it's still, a lot of the plants have J-shaped roots, so that'll make it a little difficult too. But that is one of the options. At the point where those seed pods have formed, really you need to pull the plant out and put it in trash bags. Throw it in the trash and not in the compost, because you never want to spread garlic mustard by putting in compost bins. That would be really problematic. So in Clark County, garlic mustard is too widespread for us to offer a type of assistance program to landowners. We don't have any sort of tax assessment or anything like that. So with us being in the general fund, we really are very limited now. Currently, it's just myself and one other full-time employee serving the whole county with the help of a few temporary employees. So no, we don't have the budget for helping landowners with garlic mustard, unfortunately. But if your neighbor has some, absolutely let us know about it, because our main mission is to educate the public, and we need to make sure that they're not allowing their garlic mustard to go to seed and having those seeds washed down Salmon Creek, for instance. Hopefully
Thanks,
that
Justin.
answers.
That's all.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's all on this one for now.
Great. Okay. So now we'll move on to the second species, poison hemlock. As its name suggests, it's deadly poisonous in small amounts, and the toxins found all throughout the plant, especially concentrated in the roots and the seeds, but you definitely wouldn't want to eat any part of the plant. And people have and do die fairly often. Last report that I had seen was 2014 or 15, that somebody in the Seattle area had died mistaking the plant for, they probably mistook it for parsley or something else that was edible in the carrot family. So it is very serious and quite important that we spread the word about poison hemlock. A lot of times I'll find it in side yards where children's play structures are just commingling with a large infestation of poison hemlock. So that's one of our chief aims in educating the public. You can see the distribution map from just 1 year, the reports of poison hemlock. It loves, like I say, suburban side yards, rural areas. It'll be in the waste pile where the mower can't reach. These are generally the areas where we see poison hemlock. And yeah, I'll go into more detail here with some pictures. It is in the carrot family, so it does look fairly similar to a lot of carrot plants. One of the biggest helpers to distinguish it is the size that it can reach. It is capable of growing 8 feet to 10 feet tall. A lot of times it's about 6 feet tall, depending on usually the water. It usually gets enough sunlight, so it's usually just dependent on the water that it gets. If it doesn't have enough water, it might only get to about 4 foot tall, or maybe even shorter than that. But it will definitely displace native vegetation, and it especially loves disturbed sites, but it's capable of moving right in. You can see the growth habit of the first year in the second from the left picture that's down at the bottom in the middle. It looks a lot like a fern, and if it weren't for the purple splotches all over the stems, then it would be pretty difficult to the average person to distinguish it from a fern. We see a lot of livestock poisonings with poison hemlock, since it's toxic in such small amounts. And I wanted to just highlight the fact that it is absolutely fatal. So even for a large animal like a cow, it's absolutely fatal if it gets into hay, for instance, and it dries out and loses the bitterness in the leaves, then that's a huge problem. So the close-up of the flower shows you that there's some separation of each of the little clusters. One of the lookalikes that frequently gets mistaken for wild carrot has these very flat inflorescences with lots of little flower clusters, but they're all grouped together. So this poison hemlock has a little bit more of a curved globe shape to the flower head. So that helps you a little bit. Here's a close-up of the seeds after the flowers are done. Again, you can see the separation. Wild carrot tends to have the seed all clumped together, kind of clustered, and it makes more of a cup shape as the seeds mature. You can see the close-ups of the leaves. It does look very ferny, very typical of the carrot family, but the purple splotches are a dead giveaway. Another thing about it is it has a peculiar smell. It's been variously described as musky and also mousy, like mouse urine. Once you've smelled it, then you won't forget what it smells like. But I find all these descriptions a little inadequate. It's just got a very peculiar smell. Again, here's the growth habit of second-year plants. They will start growing upright with a central stem, and the flowering will happen branching off from all the side stems. So all the way up the plant, it'll have these side branches with somewhat curved flower heads that are white. So getting to the lookalikes, one of the most tricky lookalikes is wild chervil. This one can get up to 4 feet tall, generally flowers earlier than poison hemlock, has a very similar appearance, except doesn't have the purple splotches. So again, that's one of the biggest giveaways for poison hemlock. Absolutely pay attention to the stems. You can see the stem of wild chervil has a lot of hair on it and these pronounced ridges. But sometimes it does get a little bit of a purplish cast to wild chervil on the stems, but it's an overall color and not the splotches. Wild carrot, again, as I made mention of earlier, has seeds that have these little hooks on them, as you can see in this botanical drawing, so that it'll catch in your socks and that sort of thing. And you can see the cupping of the seed head at the top of this picture. Does anybody have any questions about lookalikes of poison hemlock or poison hemlock?
There are no questions at this time.
Okay, great. So the third and final species I'd like to touch on is Tansy ragwort. Tansy ragwort is a chronic toxic plant, meaning that it doesn't instantly kill the livestock. It's very bitter, and so they generally avoid it if they can, but if they have nothing else to eat in the pasture, and we see this sometimes with overgrazed pastures, then they will reluctantly eat the bitter Tansy ragwort. They might get used to it, and then even if you're supplementing feed, then the animals are used to tansy and they'll keep eating it. And it causes chronic liver toxicity. Once you notice that there are symptoms showing, it's probably too late. It's especially problematic in hay, again, when the animals wouldn't know to be able to avoid it and they're just eating all the hay kind of en masse. So that's one of the biggest reasons why it's such a concern and causes losses in livestock. You can see the distribution map. It's generally found in pastures, also on roadsides. Our office does quite a bit of control work for Tansy ragwort along roadsides. And the requirement for Tansy, since it's a class B, is that you prevent seed dispersal. So mowing is technically acceptable, not advisable, because you'll make a very strong root system, very strong plant that'll bounce right back, and it can flower below the mower's height in the same year. And then of course the next year it's ready to go. It's got a jump start. So technically possible to mow it and comply with the law, but not a good idea. So we have various pictures of tansy, one for scale in the bottom right of what the plant looks like in its first year of growth. This is another plant that flowers in the second year, and it overwinters as this little clump of leaves. You can see the close-up shows you that it's got sort of a purplish cast at the base of all the leaves attached to the stem. Again, it's got a kind of a bitter smell to it, that you'll be able to smell if you crush the leaves. And it flowers looking like you see in the top left from a distance. That's what you're looking for. And some up close pictures of the flowers for you. You'll notice in the bottom left that the petals, they're actually called ray flowers. The petals are very, very strap shaped, and that's important for distinguishing it from lookalikes. The petals are anywhere from 11 to 13, so there's quite a few of them. Top left is what it looks like when it produces seeds. Those seed heads have that parachute attached to them, just like a dandelion seed. And so they will blow for a distance and make your neighbors very unhappy. This is a tansy plant as it looks when it's flowering on the right. Okay, moving into the lookalikes. St. Johns Wort is one of the most frequently mistaken plants for tansy ragwort. St. Johns Wort has 5 petals. They're not strap shaped, and the leaves are quite different. Once you actually get up close to the plant, you'll notice they don't have those crinkly edges. They have just simple leaves. We also sometimes have people mistake, well, really anything that's yellow. So might be common tansy, which has no ray flowers that are sticking off like that, no petals that are 13, just has these little yellow buttons for flower heads, and quite different leaves as well. They are very bunching. They grow from a central bunch. And then Scotch broom, from a distance, you just see a bunch of yellow. So people report that as well. But Scotch broom is woody. It's a large shrub, and so usually gets confused after it's been mowed. But the flowers are shaped like, well, they're pea flowers, like any legume. So they're quite different as well once you get close to them. Does anybody have any questions about tansy ragwort?
There's a person asking for clarification. Are you saying strap shape?
Yes.
S-T-R-A-P?
That's correct. Yeah, strap shaped. So they're long and narrow, as opposed to, triangular shaped petals.
Okay, and then someone's saying that they see a lot of tansy when hiking on DNR land. Does Clark County have jurisdiction, or are they interested in knowing about this sighting?
Yes, yeah, we are interested in that. A lot of times you'll be seeing something that's called woodland groundsel. Woodland groundsel is closely related to tansy and has some of the same chemicals that are so problematic for tansy. Woodland groundsel a lot of times will come on like gangbusters right after a clear cut. So it might be that you're seeing woodland groundsel, and that's fine. You can still report that to us. Maybe next time I'll put up some pictures of woodland groundsel, but it's very similar to tansy ragwort.
And speaking of things that are similar, someone's asking, is Scotch broom classified as a noxious weed?
Yes, Scotch broom is classified as a noxious weed, and it's designated for control in Clark County. It's one that's been recently designated by the Weed Board of Clark County. So right now we're especially trying to get the word out that people need to control it, especially where it impacts tree farms. But it's still pretty early in that process.
And so this might be a good time to mention that you have fantastic pictures and information on your website on all of the noxious weeds in Clark County.
Yes.
Someone's asking about, is common tansy a noxious weed?
Common tansy is not the same level. It's a class C noxious weed. It is designated for control. It's fairly rare in Clark County. We see a little bit of it at the southern end of Clark County, but there's not that much of it that I've ever seen, and it doesn't tend to spread quite as fast as Tansy ragwort. That being said, it is a little bit harder to actually kill the individual plants for common tansy. So yes, it is designated for control, and anywhere that it's impacting agriculture, then yeah, we definitely want to make sure that people are controlling it.
So there's a question asking if these should be put in a plastic bag in the garbage. And so maybe you can talk about general disposal for all of the noxious weeds. Is there a common thread on that?
Yeah, so any time that seeds are being produced, the flowers are fading and you start to see, let's say for instance, tansy starts to have its flowers fade, the petals are falling off, and maybe it's even starting to produce some of that puffy white seed head. Anytime the seeds are starting to mature, it's a good practice to make sure that those seeds can't spread. So for tansy, yes, bag it up and throw it into the landfill. That's good practice. If you have a really large site, then it's acceptable to bury it on site. Some people will pull it and then burn it. I don't advise burning it, because then you have to, check with the fire marshal, make sure you're doing all the burning correctly. But yeah, in general, whatever the noxious weed is, you want to make sure that you're not allowing it to spread at the time where you're trying to control it. So for poison hemlock, control it before the seeds are being produced. For garlic mustard, same thing. It's pretty much the same for all the noxious weeds. If it's a toxic weed, like poison hemlock or tansy ragwort, it is permissible to have a waste compost pile or a waste pile where you allow it to just rot on site, as long as you're not going to have livestock or pets or anything get into that pile and eat it. If you have a designated area where you're not going to get into that by mistake, and then you can just watch that area, make sure that that area doesn't grow a new crop of noxious weeds. But that is the concern, that the plants still do remain toxic after they've been cut. So you definitely don't want to have any poisonings occur. With garlic mustard, it's really just that the seeds would spread. So you can allow it to rot on site if you want, if you pull it early. But unless you've sprayed it and it's just kind of disintegrating all by itself, if you've pulled it, you might as well throw it in a garbage bag and get it to the landfill.
So there are two questions that harken back to the poison hemlock, and they're actually just asking if it's dermally toxic, if people pick it or pull it.
Yeah, we always advise everybody to wear gloves if they do choose to pull poison hemlock. It's quite hard to pull. It has a tap root, especially later in the year. It's like trying to pull a carrot that's, that's a 10-foot tall carrot plant. So it's quite difficult to pull out the root of poison hemlock. It is possible, and we would always advise somebody to wear gloves. And it's possible that it would have some reactions with your skin to give you a rash. Actually, one of our temporary employees actually did get a rash this year, and I hadn't heard of that previously, but yeah, now I know better. It does have potential for sensitive individuals to get a rash.
And then one more question, you had mentioned something that looked like the Tansy ragwort, and there's a person asking about the spelling of that. They were having trouble understanding what that was.
Oh, a lookalike, maybe St. John's wort.
It was before that. I'm trying to remember what you
Really?
were what you were saying.
Okay. I don't think there were any lookalikes before St. John's wort.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what the vein of.
There is also woodland groundsel. Maybe that was it.
Okay, woodland groundsel, GROUNDSEL.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, well, that's the questions that have come in on those.
All right, great. So I just wanted to let everybody know that our group is a very friendly group over at Vegetation Management. To report these noxious weeds, just feel free to call us. That's how we receive most of our reports. And we look forward to hearing from all members of the public. Citizen scientists are absolutely our most valuable people to give us these tips. Again, our focus is on education. It's only after somebody knows about the problem and has multiple years of just not returning my calls or making promises and then not doing anything that something would ever come to like a fine. Almost all the time, it can just be resolved by education, and we help them with understanding the best way to get the plants controlled. So if you do see these plants, don't pull them out yourself. Don't feel like you need to do that. Anytime you see them, if it's your neighbor's property or properties that are owned by a big entity like the Bonneville Power Administration or even federal land, we do work with federal entities. Go ahead and just report it to us and we will be discreet. And we'll make sure that if you want to have your name left out of it, then that's fine. And we always work with people in a very friendly way to make sure that agriculture and the ecosystem is protected. And really that's our best case scenario. If you don't want to call us, you can also, you can email us, sorry, weed.board@clark.wa.gov. That'll get a hold of us as well. And if you don't want to email us, you can feel free to use a reporting app such as EdMaps. I have my version of EdMaps set up with my own species list of all the things that I care about, that I want to know. Have it right there, easy to report. And I get those reports. So if you report it on EdMaps, then I will see it as well.
And that's a great segue. We're going to go ahead and show that when Justin is all done here. We're going to take you through step by step on how to do that.
Great, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to plug this graph. This is a pretty typical graph showing kind of in a general way, without any defined units, that the longer an infestation goes undetected, then the more area gets infested and the larger the cost is to control. And so if we can detect things early and spread the word early and maybe report it using an app or with a phone call, then that means that we save time and money, and eradication is much more feasible rather than just being forced into management and stopping the spread, that type of thing. And I wanted to highlight a success story of somebody who did use an app, I think it was EdMaps, to report a noxious weed species to my office. Policeman's helmet is a different species that we haven't covered, but it is an EDRR opportunity for Clark County, since there are very few infestations currently in Clark County. Most of these green dots on this map have since been eradicated, and I've been back multiple years and there's no more policeman's helmet. But the one that I wanted to highlight is at the top right of Clark County, in the northeast corner. This is a trail and a road that we don't frequent very often. So when the citizen scientist reported it to us, it was very valuable. And we have since worked with Weyerhaeuser and the National Forest to get the policeman's helmet under control out there in this remote location. So again, very valuable, a great success for us. And just wanted to also plug the Washington State Noxious Weed Control Board. They have amazing pictures of all the noxious weeds. They have the noxious weed lists with pictures to show you each species. And it's very easy to navigate. So it's nwcb.wa.gov, and you can even identify a plant on their website as well. And one last plug. If you do go hiking and you have been through any sort of potentially invasive or noxious weeds, maybe off the trail or even on the trail, it's always good practice to brush your boots, get the mud out of the little cracks on the bottom of the tread of your boot. And these sort of brushes are really helpful for that. So you can get those at playcleango.org, or just pick them up anywhere, really. A lot of times they are sold as a hoof brush. So livestock type stores will have them as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Justin. We'd love to have you stay on while we explain how to use EdMaps in case there's any questions that come in. And so
Great.
Kim is going to, Carol is going to pull up some resources that we've pulled together for you. And we'll give you that demo of EdMaps. It's pretty neat. And Carol, your slideshow is back on, so.
Yes, perfect. And Kim is going to take over.
Okay, we just wanted to go over some identification reporting do's and don'ts. We do want you to make as few or as many observation outings as you wish. Do take pictures with your smartphone. Do be mindful of traffic and watch for uneven ground. And do use common sense and stay safe and have fun. On the other hand, don't enter private property. Don't climb, use ladders, or reach out an unsafe distance. Don't perform any eradication or removal, and don't touch any plants you think could be poisonous. Use a stick to manipulate if necessary for your pictures. And again, we want to make a plug for the boot brush because its use is recommended when you leave a site or trails where you may have inadvertently picked up invasive seeds. Next slide, please. So now for how to report a finding. We recommend that you use EdMaps phone app. EdMap stands for Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System. It's a web-based mapping system for documenting invasive species and pest distribution, covers the entire US and Canada. The system collects and aggregates data from other databases, data from organizations, and volunteer observations. This system is a national network of distribution data on invasive species and pests that is then shared with educational, research, government, and other institutions. The system was launched by the University of Georgia in 2005. Another reporting app is maintained by WISC, which Justin mentioned, the Washington Invasive Species Council, and they also share their data with EdMaps. And finally, if you have any species identification questions, you may contact either Justin Colell for weeds or Yolanda Nguanzo for insects. Carol, I am going to start sharing my screen at this point. Going here.
I stopped sharing when you see that.
Okay. May have gone to sleep during our little setting there. Second here. Okay.
You're not sharing it.
Oh, I'm not
Yeah.
sharing it yet. Okay.
No.
Hold on. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So for EdMaps, first you need to install the apps. You find the app in Apple's App Store or Play Store for Android phone. All you need to do is go to your App Store, type in EdMaps, select this version, or we recommend you select this version of EdMaps. There are other versions out there. This is the most straightforward one and doesn't have a lot of functionality that you might not need for basic reporting. I've already got it installed. So once you've got it installed, you can go ahead and open EdMaps. If you're opening this on your phone for the first time, you'll be prompted to select a state. So select Washington. This ensures that you have the Washington listed species fact sheets readily available to you in the field. And you may create your EdMaps user login at this point, or you can wait until you need to upload a report. I'll demonstrate the registration steps later on in this section. So the steps to create a report. Open EdMaps, which I've just done. And when I open it, I open to this page. It always opens to this page, report observation page, I call it. So when you're on this tab, you select new sighting. And then you tap select a subject. At this point, since you've set your page to Washington State or selected Washington State, the list of Washington invasive species will come up, and then you can scroll the list to select your species. You can select just by clicking on the picture. The list can be sorted either by common name or by scientific name, but it's still a long list, even for Washington State. So it's often much easier to use the search function. To do that, just tap on the icon here and type in any part of the name of the species you're looking for. I'm going to demonstrate garlic mustard. I put in GAR. I get a very short list. It's easy to pick out garlic mustard. If I were to put in a little piece of the scientific name, LL, again, a very short list for garlic mustard. I could put in MUS and get garlic mustard. So it's very easy to do a search using the magnifying glass in that search function. So I've just selected garlic mustard. Then what you want to do is add pictures. Tap on images. And either you can take a picture right then and there with your phone, or you can choose an earlier picture you may have taken from your picture gallery. or from your photo section on your phone. I'm going to take a picture, but it's a picture, take a picture of my desktop, just as an example, because I'm not going to upload this report. Okay, it's okay. You can also choose from your gallery, as I said. And here we have a picture of garlic mustard. The next thing, the observation date is populated automatically. The location is also populated with the GPS coordinates. You could, if you wanted to, tap the map grid box to check your location, to drop or move map point, or to draw polygons around the area of infestation. This is not a feature that you have to use, but you can use it. You can point and say, oh, that's exactly where I saw it. Yes, that looks right. Or you could do a freeform polygon and say, yeah, that's the infestation. But again, this is optional. Estimate the area. You can use square foot or acres, estimate the density. I mean, if you just found 1 or 2 plants, you're looking at probably less than 5%. Notes, add any additional details that you can think of that would be helpful, and then tap save. As it says, your report is now in your queue. So the report you've just created will be saved on your app, but it won't upload automatically to EdMaps until another step is taken. And you will have the opportunity to edit your report or reports before uploading, or to delete them if need be. So here are the steps to upload your report. You go to the upload queue. If you're on the home page, this is what you'll see. If you happen to be in your navigation menu, you could also go to your queue, or you could go back to home page and go to upload queue. What you'll see now is a list of the reports you've created. It's very important to understand at this point, if you are logged in, and if you select upload from this citing screen, and here's the upload arrow, the app will immediately upload all your reports. However, if you're not logged in, the app will prompt you to log in and or register and log in. But if you first want to review or edit your observations, go ahead and tap on a citing. I'm going to tap on the one I just created. You can review your input. You want to add more notes, or maybe you have a better picture, or you just want to change it slightly. You can change it and save it. And if you want to selectively upload or delete observations in your queue, you can click on this box, literally the box in the upper right-hand section of your screen, and then select the items you want to either delete or upload. In my case, I'm going to delete this report that I've just created. But if I wanted to, I could just click them all and upload them, or click 1 or 2 of them and upload. So that's probably a little, if you have a lot of reports and you haven't had a chance to review them, you probably don't want to just hit the upload arrow from the upload key or from the citing screen, or they will all be uploaded at once, and it may not be what you want. As mentioned earlier, you will be prompted to log in before uploading. So go to the queue. Since I'm not logged in, excuse me, I'm going to go back to garlic mustard. Since I'm not logged in, if I want to upload garlic mustard and I hit the upload, it's going to tell me login required. So I'm going to register. instead of using my login, I'm going to show the registration. All you need to do is put in your first name, last name, email address, create a password, select a reporter category, probably not professional, but volunteer or citizen scientist, whichever you feel comfortable with. The country you're in. That has a drop-down list, which everyone has used. Public profile. EdMaps can always contact you if they have questions, but you may not want your profile to be public so that other researchers can contact you directly. That's your choice. And then you hit register. Once you've registered and logged in, you can go back and select the reports to upload. If you don't upload a report, it will stay in your queue until you delete it. I do have some tips. First one is use the species information list. And that is here at the home page. They're really good for seeing pictures and having information right at hand when you're trying to identify something. Show you an example of what you might want to do with garlic mustard out in the field. You would click on plants. Again, use the magnifying.
Oh, you stopped sharing, Kim.
How did I do that?
It's back. Oh, no, sorry.
Something's going on here.
You're sharing again now.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'm out in the field. I think I see garlic mustard. Not real sure, want to check. Go to the species list and you can see pictures. You kind of scroll through it and see those pictures for comparison and images. And then you could click on info and get some really specific information and descriptions, or flip back to images. So that's one thing that's really helpful. Another thing is when you're out in the field, you can create a report, even if you're out of cell service range, as long as the app has been installed, and then you can upload your report later. Another point is that the phone app registration is the same as for the EdMaps website, and your phone app reports can be accessed on the website. And just to reiterate, registering for one is registering for both, but you do have to install the phone app. The EdMaps website itself is more robust. It has training documents, and you can do your own search of reported data. I'm going to just show you a quick view of the website. This is what it looks like, www.edmaps.org. If you have questions, here's the tools and training tab. And here's the training materials. You can look at a PDF of the EdMaps app walkthrough, instructions on how to use it. If you have any further questions on the how-to aspects, please first visit the EdMaps site and go to the tools and training tab. So I think this part of the presentation is over, except for questions. So over to you, Carol.
Okay, there we go. I think, Kim, I'm not sure if you went through this, but we've also got Justin's email here on the presentation. again as well for questions, because Justin's super helpful.
Yes.
So we will be posting, actually, I think it may already be up. We're going to be posting this presentation on the Clark County Master Gardener's website. And if you don't already have that, the website here, it's listed here. We'll also be linking fact sheets and then a connection to EdMaps as well on the website for your help. Additionally, we've posted these fact sheets on weeds to the Master Gardener website, and you can also download the presentation and click from here as well. And they're all really informative fact sheets that you could even print out and take with you when you were out looking. We've also posted fact sheets on insects on the website as well from the USDA. And I'll turn it back over to Erica.
Thanks, Carol. So I wanted to just say thank you to Justin and thank you to Kim and Carol. You guys have been wonderful to work with, and thank you to all the attendees for joining us this evening. I hope that you all have plans to join us again tomorrow evening for the counterpart for tonight's talk, Invasive Insects, where we'll be talking about 3 invasive insects that are considered when, not if, invading insects in Clark County. I've put a couple of links in the chat box, and one is a link to tomorrow night's training. You can click on it now and it will open in another window that will still be open after we're done this evening. Alternatively, you can send me an email or you can visit the WSU Extension Clark County website, which is the other link that I've posted here, and you can see this event as well as others. And like Carol said, all of the supporting materials as well as a recording of tonight's talk will be there. And we'll also send a follow-up email with these items in it. So we do want to open up for more questions for Justin. But before we do, we're going to ask you to take a moment and complete that short evaluation that we mentioned. I'm going to launch it right here on the screen in just a minute. And as Kim mentioned, it includes 6 items, essentially in pairs, for which we'd like you to indicate your knowledge. The first in each pair asks you to rate your knowledge before the talk, and the second on your knowledge following the talk. So they look like duplicates, but they're not. And then lastly, we just want to get a feel for how many of you plan to go out and see if you can find some of the weeds that we discussed tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll. It should be coming at you right now. And go ahead and click on your screen indicating your level of understanding of these 3 items before and then again after. And I'll be able to see once you have completed the 7 questions. And then we'll encourage you to put questions in the chat box for Justin or for Kim or Carol or I about some of the things we talked about. Okay, the first vote has come in. This is anonymous. I can't tell who's saying what, but I can see that you're starting to complete the poll, and that's very exciting. We're just past 50% of you, so please take another minute or 2 to complete the poll. If you've completed the poll and you have questions you'd like to put in the chat box, that'll be great. I'll refer those to Justin. Someone has said that your poll disappeared. That may have been because you hit submit. Otherwise, I'm not sure how to bring the poll back for you. Looks like we're waiting for 6 more people to complete the poll. Always aiming for 100%. We'll do another 20 seconds. I see a good question that's come in. I'll be referring that to Justin in just a second here. Okay, well, it looks like we're done with the polling. I'm going to go ahead and hit end poll. And so there's a question for Justin. The question is it helpful to put in a species that isn't high priority, such as one that is not discussed tonight?
Oh, yeah. I would say that it can be helpful without knowing which species we're talking about. I would say maybe it wouldn't be. But for instance, if you found some blackberry and you want to put that in, maybe that's just good practice for yourself. I'm not sure. As far as would I review all of the reports throughout Clark County for blackberry and then send people information about how to control their blackberry? Well, not without somebody who is requesting that. So with the resources that we have, we really try to respond to interested persons who want the information. But that said, maybe something that's already widespread would still be just good practice for you. Also, I wanted to say, maybe it would be helpful for me to highlight the woodland groundsel, because I just did a quick search and I've got some pictures of it. I think I'll
That'd
just
be great.
put this up. Yeah, I think I'll just put this up really quick and share my screen.
Carol, do you want to stop sharing?
I think I got it. Did that work?
We can see that you've done a search, yes.
Great. Okay. So here's the Latin name for woodland groundsel, if you want to write that down. Looks like Sylvaticus or something. You can see that woodland groundsel is a bit different than Tansy ragwort. And you can see that the flower heads, while they do have some ray flowers, it's still related to Tansy ragwort. They're a lot more single in each flower head. You can kind of see each flower head singly, and
Justin,
the leaves.
could you go ahead and click on that so we can see?
Oh, sure, yeah. So let's see. I got a really good one, like that one. So here's one of the pictures of woodland groundsel. You can see the leaves aren't really good in this one, but the flower heads, you can see the little ray flowers are kind of curled instead of straight out. Each flower head is much more distinct from the rest of the pack. Here's a good picture of the leaves. They're quite different. And here's another one. The leaves are fuzzy, a different color green, and just generally smaller. The whole plant is just generally smaller than a Tansy ragwort. As I said, it does have some of the same chemical compounds, but this is especially common right after clear cut. And so is Tansy, make no mistake. We also get Tansy right after a clear cut. But I just wanted to show that because that might be what you're seeing instead of Tansy.
And there was a question about common groundsel. Is that one that is noxious or that should be reported?
Well, common groundsel is not one that is designated for control in Clark County. So we see that pretty widespread, and it's not generally something that my office would go after. We might still talk to somebody if we see it and they're concerned with it, but yeah, that's pretty widespread. And again, common groundsel is in the same sort of family as Tansy ragwort, so it looks pretty similar as well.
Okay, so there's no other questions in the chat box, so we'll assume that folks got all the information that they needed to get out there and take a look. So again, thanks for attending tonight. Hope to see you again tomorrow night, where we'll be looking at the insect counterparts. And thanks again to everyone, and have a good evening.
Thanks, Erica.